Welcome to Battleforge Legends, the channel for those passionate about military history. Today, we will explore the invasion of Poland, 1939, the event that ignited World War II, where Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union carved up a nation in the heart of Europe. This is a story of imperial ambition, betrayal, and unyielding resistance. With over 2 million soldiers, thousands of tanks and aircraft, this war shaped the world's fate. Let's analyze each phase from the tense background to the devastating consequences. Like, share, and subscribe to not miss out on top-tier history videos. Part 1. Background of Poland's formation and neighboring tensions. Now let's delve into the background of Poland's formation and the simmering tensions with its neighbors. Factors leading to the invasion on September 1st, 1939, often considered the spark of World War II. However, initially, this was just a regional war between neighbors, with Poland caught between two hostile superpowers, Germany and the Soviet Union. To understand clearly, we must go back to after World War I, when Europe's map was redrawn amid controversy. The Second Polish Republic officially declared independence in 1918 after over 183 years of partition among Russia, Prussia, later Germany, and Austria-Hungary. This was the result of the collapse of Central European empires and the rising tide of nationalism. Poland's western borders were determined by the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, an agreement imposed by the victorious Allies on defeated Germany. However, implementing these borders was not smooth. Violent conflicts erupted in regions like Upper Silesia and Poznan, areas once part of Germany, lasting until 1921, with uprisings and plebiscites. Poland gained some territory, but this left deep wounds for Germany, which saw it as an insult. The eastern borders were even more complex-shaped after the Polish-Soviet War of 1920-1921. This was a bitter war where Polish forces under Józef Piłsudski repelled the Red Army, leading to the Treaty of Riga in 1921. Poland expanded eastward, annexing areas with Ukrainian and Belarusian populations, but this fostered long-term Soviet resentment, viewing Poland as a class enemy and a barrier to Bolshevik revolution. Both Germany and the Soviet Union were dissatisfied with the post-Versailles order. They saw Poland as an illegitimate product of a system they resented, an artificial nation obstructing their ambitions. The Warsaw government tried to maintain peace by signing non-aggression pacts with Moscow in 1932 and Berlin in 1934. These agreements seemed to bring temporary stability, but in reality, they were mere facades hiding true intentions. Adolf Hitler, who came to power in 1933, viewed expansion eastward as a historic mission to gain Lebensraum, living space, for the German people. He wanted to reclaim territories ceded to Poland in 1919, like the Danzig Corridor, and turn Poland into a satellite or German territory. Joseph Stalin's intentions are even more debated. Some historians argue he wanted to reconquer old Tsarist Empire lands, expanding Soviet borders westward to create a security buffer against Germany. Others contend Stalin was simply opportunistic, ready to seize any territory possible. The Soviet regime viewed Poles as class enemies, particularly targeting ethnic Polish communities during the Great Terror of 1937-1938, where tens of thousands were executed or deported. These tensions were like a time bomb waiting to be detonated. In summary, Poland was born from the ashes of World War I, but its very formation sowed the seeds of conflict with neighbors. In the next part, we will explore the events leading to war and the dark German-Soviet agreement. Part 2. Events leading to war and the German-Soviet agreement. Continuing the prolonged border tensions, events in 1938 pushed Europe to the brink of war, with Poland becoming Germany's primary target. That year, Germany annexed the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia after the Munich Agreement, a deal where Britain and France appeased Hitler to avoid conflict. The Polish government under Foreign Minister Józef Beck also seized the opportunity to occupy a small piece of Czechoslovak territory, the Zaolzie region, with Germany's tacit consent. Warsaw at that time still viewed the Soviet Union as the greatest threat based on memories of the 1920–1921 war. However, after Munich, Hitler shifted focus to Poland as the next step in his expansion plan. German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop began issuing direct demands, calling it the German-Polish question. He demanded resolution of the status of the Free City of Danzig, a former German seaport now overseen by the League of Nations, but economically and custom managed by Poland. Berlin accused Warsaw of obstructing access to the East Prussia province isolated by the Polish corridor. To increase pressure, local Germans in Danzig, incited by Nazi propaganda, caused unrest through protests and clashes. These demands were not just territorial, but aimed at controlling rail and road routes through the corridor, threatening Polish sovereignty. Faced with the increasingly clear danger, the Polish government sought support from the West. They signed alliances with Britain and France, receiving assurances that if Germany attacked, the two powers would intervene. By summer 1939, war seemed inevitable. Marshal Edward Rydz-Śmigły, the Polish army's commander-in-chief, declared resolutely that his country would fight for independence, even if isolated and facing superior enemies. Warsaw's atmosphere was filled with anxiety, with drills and defense preparations. Hitler, though confident, did not want a two-front war. He doubted Britain and France would honor their commitments to Poland, but to be sure, he sought to neutralize the Soviet Union. Despite being ideological enemies, Nazis, anti-communist, and vice versa, both sides shared the goal of overturning the post-Versailles European order and expanding empires. On August 23, 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Non-Aggression Pact was signed between Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov and Ribbentrop. This was a public agreement for peace, but it included a secret protocol dividing Eastern Europe into spheres of influence: Germany, free to act in the remnants of old Czechoslovakia, Western Poland, and Lithuania; the Soviet Union, free in Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Eastern Poland, and Bessarabia from Romania. To justify the invasion in late August, Germany staged a series of fake border incidents. The most prominent was the Gleiwitz incident, where SS under Reinhard Heydrich, dressed in Polish uniforms, attacked a German radio station and left bodies of prisoners from Sachsenhausen camp, along with local Poles, as evidence. Similar incidents at customs posts, railway stations, and border guards were used to propagandize that Poland was the aggressor. These dark agreements paved the way for tragedy. In the next part, we will explore the plans and forces of both sides. Part 3. Plans and forces of both sides. With the secret agreement signed and border incident staged, both sides began implementing military plans. Germany's plan, codenamed Fall Weiss, Case White, was a lightning strike strategy to crush Poland in weeks. It involved two main axes. From the north, two armies would seal the Danzig corridor and advance south from East Prussia toward Warsaw, aiming to cut the capital off from the rest of the country. From the south, three larger armies would advance north to Warsaw and east to Lwów, now Lviv, creating a pincer movement. For support, Slovakia, a German satellite state, allowed German troops to use its territory as a springboard, avoiding difficult Carpathian terrain. German forces focused on speed and mechanized power. Armored and motorized divisions supported by the Luftwaffe would breach Polish lines encircling enemy forces west of the Vistula River, a major natural barrier. Total German strength reached 1.5 million men with 3,200 armored vehicles and about 2,000 aircraft, a superior air advantage. Most of the 2,000 tanks were light Panzer Barn and II were small models captured from Czechoslovakia, not the heavy ones of later years. The Germans had 50 divisions, of which only 6 were armored and 4 motorized. The rest still relied on horse-drawn artillery and transport, a fact showing the Wehrmacht was not fully modernized. Additionally, 3 Slovak divisions joined, providing another 40,000 troops to support the southern flank. On the Polish side, the defensive plan relied on holding the entire borderline, hoping to buy time for Western allies to intervene. However, their forces were vastly inferior, about 1 million men in 38 infantry divisions, only 1 motorized division, and 11 cavalry brigades, symbols of Poland's cavalry tradition. They had 1,100 armored vehicles, but most were small, outdated, like World War I Renault FT, lacking effective anti-tank weapons. The Polish Air Force was particularly weak, with only 750 obsolete aircraft, unable to compete with the Luftwaffe in numbers or technology. Due to advice from Britain and France to avoid provoking Germany, Poland delayed full mobilization. As a result, by September 1st, only about half the forces were ready in defensive positions, with many units still moving or under-equipped. This disparity put Poland at a disadvantage, but their resistance spirit remained high. Part 4. German Campaign and Initial Polish Resistance. As dawn broke on September 1st, 1939, Germany officially launched the invasion of Poland, starting World War II. Hitler declared on radio that this was a counterattack in response to fake attacks staged by the SS at the border. German forces, using early Blitzkrieg tactics, poured across the border from 2 directions. Motorized and armored divisions, supported by Luftwaffe aircraft, aimed to breach Polish lines, quickly encircling opposing units before they could organize. U-87 Stuka aircraft, with their distinctive wailing sirens, bombed defensive positions, logistics depots, and command centers, sowing chaos in Polish ranks. Other bombing raids targeted cities like Wielun, with no military objectives to terrorize civilians and destroy the will to resist. One of the first clashes was on the Westerplatte Peninsula in Danzig. The German warship Schleswig-Holstein, anchored under the guise of a friendship visit, suddenly opened fire on the Polish outpost. With only 180 soldiers, the Polish force under Major Henryk Sucharski fought fiercely against superior firepower. They held out until September 7th, surprising the Germans and becoming a symbol of heroic resistance. Elsewhere, Polish troops showed resilience. At Mokra, a Polish cavalry division using anti-tank guns and flexible tactics temporarily halted German tanks, inflicting significant losses. At Kroyanti, a clash between Polish Ulan cavalry and German tanks was distorted by German press into the myth of Polish cavalry, charging tanks with lances to mock the enemy. Reporters like Kurt Frauen exaggerated these stories, portraying Polish prisoners as romantic but reckless warriors for German propaganda. However, Germany's speed and firepower were overwhelming. Polish units not fully deployed were split and encircled in defensive pockets. Lacking anti-tank weapons and air support, they quickly ran out of ammunition and supplies. Polish command centers fell into chaos as communications were disrupted by airstrikes and rapid German advances. On September 3rd, War Minister Tadeusz Kaspersky ordered concentration on defending Warsaw, but many units were already isolated. Despite brave resistance, the Polish army could not halt the German war machine's deep penetration into territory. Part 5. International Reaction and Major Battles. On September 3, 1939, as news of Britain and France declaring war on Germany reached Poland, Warsaw's atmosphere exploded with hope. People like Helena Regulska, a wartime witness, described crowds pouring into the streets, cheering with expectations that Allied forces would soon rescue them. But this joy was fleeting as battlefield realities quickly exposed the force disparity. German troops with astonishing speed captured Krakow, Poland's cultural cradle, without significant resistance on September 6th. By the 8th, German vanguard units reached Warsaw's outskirts, but city defenders utilizing urban terrain temporarily halted their advance. German military reports noted unexpected difficulties facing fierce resistance at the capital, where Poles erected barricades and used every building to fight back. On September 9th, Poland launched one of the campaign's largest counteroffensives at the Bzura River west of Warsaw. The Battle of Bzura, commanded by General Tadeusz Kuterzeba, aimed to break the German encirclement and open a path for units to withdraw to the capital. This was the fiercest battle, with Poles initially surprising and pushing back some German units. A few troops escaped to Warsaw, but pressure from motorized divisions and relentless Luftwaffe airstrikes shrank the defensive pocket. After a week, Bzura's Polish forces were crushed, with thousands killed or captured. In the north, at Wisna, often called Poland's Thermopylae, a small force of 700 Poles under Captain Władysław Raginis held out against 40,000 Germans for 3 days, inflicting notable losses before being overwhelmed. By September 15th, Warsaw was fully besieged. Germany demanded unconditional surrender, but Polish military and civilians firmly refused, determined to defend the capital. Meanwhile, German forces advanced east, fearing Poland would form a new defensive line between Brest-Litovsk and Lwów. They captured Lwów first, while intensifying city bombings. German aircraft, machine gun refugees, and troops causing chaos and death. Poland's hopes rested on promises from Britain and France, but harsh reality, France conducted only limited advances in Saar, then quickly withdrew to the Maginot Line. No substantial support arrived, leaving Poland alone against the German war machine. Part 6. Soviet Intervention and Initial Atrocities on September 17, 1939. As Polish forces exhausted against Germany, the Soviet Union delivered a fatal blow. Implementing the secret protocol of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Red Army crossed Poland's eastern border. Germany had pressed Stalin to act from early September, but he delayed to resolve the border conflict with Japan and Mongolia and prepare forces. Stalin feared Germany's rapid advance would leave the Soviets without agreed territory. Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov declared the Polish government disintegrated, leaving Ukrainians and Belarusians defenseless, a fabricated pretext as Polish forces were still fiercely resisting in Warsaw and elsewhere. The Red Army deployed 2 fronts with 470,000 troops, 4,000 tanks, 5,500 guns, and 2,000 aircraft, facing about 350,000 Poles, mostly reservists lacking heavy weapons. Many Polish soldiers, like Janusz Bardak, initially mistook the Soviets for allies against Germany. Some local communities, especially Ukrainians, Belarusians, and Jews, welcomed the Red Army, hoping better treatment under Soviet rule than the Polish government. However, fighting occurred. At Grodno, Poles used Molotov cocktails and machine guns to hold Soviet tanks for 2 days. At Lwów, already besieged by Germans, the Red Army entered, leading to tension as the two sides nearly coordinated an assault before Germany withdrew per agreement. On September 22nd, Germany and the Soviet Union held a joint parade in Brest-Litovsk with arches bearing swastikas and red stars. German General Heinz Guderian and Soviet commander Semyon Krivoshein, a Jew, conversed in French, marking the strange cooperation between regimes. Britain and France, horrified by Soviet actions, chose not to declare war. Ambassador William Seeds remarked that war with Moscow would be disadvantageous, though he personally wanted to confront Molotov. Both Germany and the Soviet Union imposed terror in occupied zones. Germany viewed Poles, especially Jews, 10% of population, as inferior. SS special units, Einsatzgruppen, executed intellectuals, nobles, and Jews, like 500 in Przemysl. The Wehrmacht also massacred, such as killing 1,000 civilians in Częstochowa, witnessed by Helena Spielmann. In total, Germany executed 15,000 in 5 weeks. Hitler later amnestied all war crimes. The Soviets arrested or shot community leaders, officers, and wealthy farmers, deporting thousands to Gulag labor camps. Smaller massacres occurred, like after Grodno and Lwów battles. Both sides turned Poland into a land without citizen rights, opening years of brutal occupation. Part 7: Defense of Warsaw and Campaign's End. By late September 1939, Polish resistance focused on hotspots Modlin Fortress, Kock area, and central Warsaw. The Polish government, seeing the hopeless situation, fled to neutral Romania, then France, to organize exile resistance. At Warsaw, Germans planned a quick capture but lacked urban combat experience and faced fierce opposition. The defending force, about $180,000, including soldiers and militia, utilized urban terrain, narrow streets, ruined buildings, and improvised barricades to fight back despite shortages of ammunition and heavy weapons. A prime example was at the Polish Artillery Academy, where a single gun operated by cadets destroyed 3 German assault vehicles, slowing the Wehrmacht's 10th Division advance. The Luftwaffe unleashed non-stop bombings, turning Warsaw into a sea of fire. On September 25th, Germany conducted the era's largest raid with 370 aircraft, dropping hundreds of tons of bombs, destroying power water systems, and igniting citywide fires. Witness Halina Regulska described the scene as hell on earth, with smoke dust and screams amid rubble. Mayor Stefan Starzyński became a morale symbol with constant radio broadcasts urging Britain and France for aid. Initially, pleas for help, later calls for revenge. Warsaw is fighting. Poland is not lost. These speeches inspired but couldn't hide reality. The city lacked water, food, and disease began spreading. Yet Poles held out. Units used guerrilla tactics, sewers, and basements for ambushes. But with depleted resources and no Allied relief, the situation became hopeless. On September 28th, Warsaw surrendered. Modlin Fortress followed soon after, and by October 6th, the final battle at Kock ended, marking the close of organized resistance. Germany held a victory parade in Warsaw, filmed by propaganda director Leni Riefenstahl, to showcase Wehrmacht might. About 80,000 to 200,000 Polish soldiers escaped to neutral neighbors like Hungary and Romania, though en route, some units like Captain Romuald Galicki's clashed with local armed groups such as Ukrainian militias. Germany and the Soviet Union achieved their goals, dividing Poland per agreement. Stalin called it friendship sealed in blood. Germany gained more Polish land and Soviet raw materials, while the Soviets controlled Lithuania. German propaganda amplified Blitzkrieg as invincible, though German commanders admitted unreadiness for larger war with Britain and France. Part 8: Losses and consequences. The 1939 invasion of Poland left unhealable wounds not just for Poland, but shaping World War II's course. German losses were relatively low, about 15,000 soldiers killed, 30,000 wounded, and 3,400 missing. They lost 217 tanks, 10% of deployed, but Germany's industrial power quickly replenished. The Red Army suffered even lighter with only 750 dead and 1,800 wounded due to facing weakened, disorganized Poles. However, these figures pale against Poland's catastrophe. The Polish army lost 70,000 to 120,000 soldiers with 130,000 wounded. About 700,000 were captured by Germans, another 220,000 by Soviets. Civilians suffered terribly with 100,000 to 200,000 killed, mainly from Luftwaffe's brutal bombings and systematic massacres. Cities like Wielun and Warsaw were razed, leaving millions homeless. These numbers reflect only the invasion phase, not the prolonged horrors under German and Soviet occupation. The campaign's consequences went beyond numbers. Poland, reborn after World War I, was erased from the map again. Germany established the general government in central and western Poland, turning it into a center of repression and exploitation. The Soviets annexed the East, beginning Sovietization and deporting tens of thousands to Siberian labor camps. Both regimes imposed brutal policies to erase Polish identity. Germany targeted Jews and elites, while Soviets eliminated or exiled anyone seen as a communist threat. The campaign also birthed the Blitzkrieg myth. German propaganda magnified the Wehrmacht's invincibility with seamless tank-air coordination, creating a perfect war machine image. In reality, it was more complex. German high command worried about depleting ammunition and lack of preparation for prolonged war with Britain and France. For Poland, defeat didn't extinguish resistance. Tens of thousands of escaped soldiers joined exile forces fighting on Allied fronts. The invasion sparked a global war lasting 6 years, claiming tens of millions of lives. The 1939 invasion of Poland was not just World War II's spark, but a tale of resilience on the brink of death. From heroic battles at Westerplatte Bzura to Mayor Stefan Starzyński's defiant calls, Polish spirit was never subdued despite Molotov-Ribbentrop betrayal and Allied indifference. This campaign left profound lessons on the cost of imperial ambition in war's brutality. Thanks to historians and support from Patreon and Nebula, where you can explore series like 16 Days in Berlin. If you love military history, like, share, and subscribe to Battleforged Legends. Turn on notifications for new videos. Comment the battle you want us to cover next, Stalingrad, Dunkirk, or another battlefield. See you in the next video where we continue exploring heroic history pages.